Hello and welcome to my preview of the 2025 Transcontinental Race. This one's a bit of a favourite of mine. It's one of the original bikepacking races in Europe, and it was the first event I ever took part in. Today I'm going to run you through the Transcontinental Race for 2025, and also I'll be doing my daily coverage over the next 10 days or so, following the race every single day on the tracking page. But let's just start with the Transcontinental Race, and as you may know, it was founded in 2013 by Mike Hall. So it was basically a single stage race all the way across Europe. My first edition was 2014, so I did one of the really early ones, and also 2015. And I've also done a couple of recent ones, but I managed to finish the first two on the podium way back, and the second two I've just not been able to finish. So it's a bit of annoying for me. But this is the route for 2025. The big change is the start location is now in Spain. So Santiago de Compostela, and the finish in Constanta, Romania. So this is a big shift for the Transcontinental Race. Usually it starts northwest. So Gerasbergen's been a favourite. Last year it was Roubaix. It's been in Brest a couple of times. And the finish is normally... it's probably the furthest north finish it's been, but it has finished in Bulgaria, finished in Istanbul 3 times and a few times in Greece as well. So it's kind of marking a slightly sort of different journey across Europe, and I'll dig into the checkpoints as I get on through this video. I'll also mention a couple of riders who are favourites to watch. However, I won't go into too much depth. I did the Ultrascape podcast with Becky Waters a couple of days back, so if you click on that, I'll put the link on screen now. We go into depth about some of the competitors and the favourites for the race. That's a good listen if you want to know more about the people taking part. But I'll do a brief summary in a second. And also, I've got a sponsor for my daily coverage. So a big thank you to POC. They do helmets, they do sunglasses, all cycling gear. They actually sponsor one of the checkpoints on the Transcontinental Race this year. I've been riding them POC helmets for a number of years now. Really great products, good glasses. I actually used the Cytel, which is their kind of semi-aero helmet. That's what I started on last year. Not in the pink colour, mind you. Really comfy, pretty light. And I went for that slightly sort of aero edge, which is a factor in a race like the TCR, especially at the speeds it's completed nowadays. They're offering 20% discount, so I'll put a little link on screen now or underneath in the description, and you can get 20% off anything on the POC website. So what I'll do is I'll just start with a couple of favourites. Basically we've got three previous winners on the start line. So I'll just sort of mention those, and then if you refer to the podcast for a bit more depth, there's a number of riders that could be in the top 10 in both the men's and the women's. Myself and Becky went into much more detail there. But the first returning rider or winner is Christoph Strasser. He's won 2 editions over the past few years. He was second again last year behind Robin Gempele, who's not returning this year. Christoph is lining up again and aiming to make it 3 wins on the Transcontinental Race. Christoph, he's been racing like long distance races for years, most notably the Race Across America, and he's won that numerous times, holds the record there, but he's made the switch to this unsupported style of racing. And I think it's fair to say he's kind of been learning on the job over certainly the first edition of TCR, and he won that basically in the last quarter. Really, he sort of came through the field, but since then he's kind of learnt the more specific skills required for unsupported racing. So he's got to be a firm favourite. Christoph Strasser is back again. Another rider to watch, last year's women's winner, Jana Kessenheimer. She's back again, and this year there is a big focus on the women's race. So Lost Dot, who are the organisation behind the Transcontinental Race, they have created the 100 Women campaign, and the idea was to get 100 women on the start line. I think they had over 100 sign-ups, but I think there's around 80 women actually taken to the start line, which is still a huge improvement from previous years, and I think just setting that 100 women goal has really kind of sort of just enticed women to just take part. And I think the biggest thing with things like the TCR is you've just got to do it and find out. It's very daunting, but having that incentive has really bumped up the women's field, which is great. And Jana's a really great ambassador for the sport, and she's back again, seeing if she can defend her title. And another previous women's winner, Jamie Wilson, she was actually second to Jana as well. She's back again. This must be probably her third TCR now. So really great to see Jamie back on the race. And she's a pretty ferocious competitor. So I think the women's race is going to be really great to watch this year. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's multiple women in the top 10 overall. And of course, the race has been won overall by a woman, Fiona Kolbinger. She won the edition that finished in Brest, so the one kind of anomaly in the TCR, where it started in the east and finished in the west. And Fiona won that in a pretty spectacular fashion. She's not here this year, but I think it just goes to show that these races can be won outright by women, and it's been proven time and time again. Looking forward to see how it all pans out this year. So as I said, there's plenty more riders, both male and female, to watch. So listen to the podcast, myself and Becky will dive into some more riders there. I'll be bringing updates every single day on YouTube, and also I'll put it out as a podcast as well. So if you haven't got time to sit down in front of your computer and just want to listen, the daily updates will be available there. But let's get on to the race now. So this is the homepage of the TCR race. So they've got their own media as well. They do some really good podcasts, which are definitely worth a listen. There'll be daily reports, and they'll all be on this page. So lost.cc, and you can see they're using Follow My Challenge as the mapping or the tracking software, and you can see the checkpoints spread across Europe here. And there's a live leaderboard, so that's a really good place just to sort of get all your information. All the routes are available on Riber GPS, so you can see here this is the collection, and you can see the parkour sections and the checkpoints. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into those now, and basically do a lot of focus on the route, because I think you need it's good to have the maps up, and we can start doing some speculation to see where the riders will go. So the Transcontinental Race is a free route race. So basically all the riders have to plan their own routes, and they're provided with the checkpoints and some mandated parkour sections, which you can see here on this map on Riber GPS. So if I zoom out, you can see the start and the finish of each mandatory section, and there's normally a control point and a mandatory parkour section paired together. The control point isn't necessarily on the parkour section, it could be a few K after, but what it does is it just kind of it gives the race some direction without mandating exactly where riders have to go, and quite often it makes a few kind of interesting choices. So there's a few little bits that I've kind of picked up on over the course of the route. So basically what I'll do is I'll start at the start, as kind of makes sense, and run through each checkpoint and see see if there's any points of interest. So this year, a new start location, Santiago de Compostela over in Spain. So as I said, this is the first time this start location has been used. It'll be the most westerly start point of the race has ever been in the history of the race. And quite interestingly, if you look at the mandatory start parkour here, the riders are heading west to start, which is pretty unusual. So instead of just normally riders just tend to go sort of straight towards the first checkpoint, but this mandatory parkour is taking riders out. You can see there's some busier roads around here. So what it's doing is essentially it's allowing the riders to have a nice ride out. There's nearly 450 riders, so there's a lot of riders. So this is just kind of keeping the race nice and controlled to start. What I've done here on Riber GPS, I've just put the Google Map player on, mainly because one of the most useful tools on for the Transcontinental Race, where riders are predominantly on roads, is a little Google man here. So what we can do is just kind of drop it on and see what the riders are going to be expecting, and it all looks very nice. Pretty easy going, nice rolling tarmac to start with, heading out towards the coast, as you can see. And the riders start at 8 p.m. So I'm currently recording this on Sunday the 27th, which is the start day of the TCR. So it starts tonight, so in about 12 hours time, just under. And so it will be getting dark probably about 9, half 9, I would have thought. So they're not going to see these fantastic views, but that gives you an idea. They'll be following this coastline, going out to the coast, following the coastline round. And then the parkour finishes right up here, the Faro di Finestra, so right on this little peninsula. So that's when we're going to start seeing, well, to be honest, we're going to start seeing the first bit of chaos, because I'd imagine a lot of riders are going to double back. I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of riders in this little area here. Another factor to consider with the Transcontinental Race is there are a number of banned roads. So essentially, you can only cycle on roads that are legally possible. So, for example, you can't just go down the motorway. If the road is legally banned to ride on, then you can't ride on it. But there's also a number of other roads which are banned, which fall on this resource map. So it can be a bit of a puzzle, and you can see the further east, the crazier it gets. And it's mainly for rider safety. Now, in the early days of the Transcontinental Race, when it finished in Istanbul, we were literally riding down the motorway into Istanbul. It wasn't illegal, but maybe it wasn't necessarily the safest. And certainly as the race has developed and grown, and we've seen accidents happen. Basically the knowledge of the race over the last decade has been sort of put into this map, which has banned certain roads. There's certain tunnels or roads which have tunnels which you could probably cycle on, but they're just not safe. And I remember being quite 2014, I was young and naive, and it was all just a big adventure. And you sort of ride through a sketchy road, and you think, oh, that was a little bit iffy. And then 2015, I went back again. And the second part, probably the last third of the route, I did exactly the same as I did in 2014. And I just remember being petrified, knowing that I was going onto a dangerous road and feeling like I got away with it quite often. But there wasn't these banned roads in place at that point. I think they probably came in the year or two after that. So it's good, and it makes planning a little bit more interesting. So you can see the first banned road is very soon after the end of the parkour. So the parkour finishes down here, Faro di Finestra, Fistera. So you're not allowed on this road here. So it's going to be interesting to see what riders do there. As I said, it's going to be pretty chaotic because the riders are most likely going to loop back on themselves. And the logical place would be to ride on this road here. So it's a VG 1.4, which, as you can see, is banned. So I suspect, I've done a little bit of research. You could probably go further inland here, but if you put the little Google Man on, this is how you plan a route as well. You just do a lot of looking. There looks like there's a little access road down the side, so I'm sure some riders may be running parallel to that road on the access road. And if we zoom in, we might even be able to see something on the satellite, possibly. Oh, here we go. Look. So there's a little parallel road here, which looks like it goes most of the way. So quite often when you see a banned road on the TCR resource map, it will be because there is just a quieter option next to it, which sometimes takes a bit of digging into. So I'd expect some riders to be there. Other riders will just go across here. And that's the start parkour. The next one, if we zoom out a little bit on my map, is the Picos de Europa. So it's a national park, and you can see it's pretty mountainous here. I remember I rode through here in 2017 just on a tour, and it took me by surprise quite how big those mountains are. If I put the terrain layer on here, you can see it's going to be a really quite hilly and hard start to get here. And quite often on the TCR, riders are planning their own route. And what you need to do is try and find the flattest route. The most direct route is not always the fastest because you might get extra elevation. So I wonder, there's probably two ways to approach this. I guess some riders might go to the north, basically around these mountains, and you can see the main roads through the mountains in north to south. So I suspect some riders may head further north, through sort of Gijon and then come back in. And others might go further south, sort of Ponferrada, maybe Lyon. This is the way I went, Lyon and then up. And then the checkpoint is in the Picos de Europa National Park. Now, if I go back to the Google map, you can see, so basically there's a road up. It's basically a dead end to all intents and purposes, certainly if you're in a car. Let me see if the terrain shows it. Kind of. You can kind of see there's like a bit of a horseshoe of mountains here. And the checkpoint, or the parkour, is actually, it starts at the top and then heads downwards. So the road up is like a tourist road. So pretty fine, it's absolutely spectacular. No problems riding that on a road bike. The actual parkour itself, so you can see like the start is, so you need to ride the parkour in the correct direction. So start at the green start and finish at the stop. If we put the man on here, you can kind of get a bit of a feel of what it's like, hopefully, if it loads up. And you can see here it's basically a really, like, it's a concrete road. So that's the town down here, and riders will need to be descending this. So the big question is, do riders play it safe and come in from the east on that road? Or if you zoom in, you can see there's a bit of a road across the top of the mountains here. There's not really much in the way of kind of info on it, but I suspect it's just a small dirt road that goes through the mountains. So some riders may take that option, come in from this direction on the dirt roads, or maybe some riders like to play it safer. I know Christoph Strasser avoids gravel at all costs, so the other option is to come around and go up and down, and the actual checkpoint is somewhere over here. So basically the riders are being sort of funneled to go off-road into the Picos de Europa, but there is an option for tarmac. So yeah, that's going to be the first little puzzle point for the race. And then the next section, into the Pyrenees for the first time ever on the Transcontinental Race, going over the Col du Tourmalet, which is in here. A couple of other pretty big climbs as well, Col de Soleure. So if you saw the Tour de France in the last few weeks, they did a stage which took in some of these climbs. So again, a very interesting, how they set these parkours is very interesting, because they've put the start up here, up towards the valleys. Let me put the terrain on again. Sorry, up towards the peak and the border, which kind of entices you to, if you're planning a route, to basically go through northern Spain and then cross the mountains here. There are a few kind of banned passes as well. There's a few tunnels on those Pyrenean crossings, which obviously you can't cycle through, or not easily. So you can see here there's a couple that are banned, or a couple of roads. So I think some riders will go this way. This is the first split I think we'll see. So some riders going sort of Vitoria, Pamplona, and then cutting across from Jaca. I think you can go across at Formigal and then dropping into the parkour. But another way which could work could be just following around through Bilbao, San Sebastian, and then coming in on the flat way. It's quite lumpy on the south of the Pyrenees, but on the north here it's the big plains in France, and the roads up into the mountains are pretty easy, pretty easy going. So again, some riders may go to the north of the Pyrenees and some riders might go to the south. If you come from the north, basically go to Pau and then go straight up these big valley roads, which are very easy to ride. Quite a lot of them often have cycle paths on them. There's obviously a lot of cycle tourism in the Pyrenees, so it's pretty easy going. But if you did it that way, you'd have to ride up the parkour, get to the start, and then return before starting the mountains. So it's I think there's a payoff between distance and kind of elevation, i.e. you get more distance and less elevation, or you go more direct and just taking a load of climbing. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. And I don't think the race is really, it's going to be very difficult to really like read too much into the race for the first couple of days. And in my opinion, the race won't really get going until the riders hit Italy. So once the riders have gone over the Tourmalet, they then have to traverse basically the south of France. So the next checkpoint is the Strrada de Azieta. Now this is a parkour that I know pretty well because this was in the race in 2015, and I actually rode it again last year. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just show you a bit of video which I actually took last year, and this shows you basically what the riders are going to be taking on. So as you can see, it's basically an old military road. It's fairly well driven. There's lots of kind of 4x4s and especially touring motorbikes on here. And you're basically on this ridge and you're above 2,000 metres most of the way. So this is in the reverse direction to that the riders will be riding. And you can see it's not too rough, but on a road bike, especially if you're not running kind of pretty big tyres, it can be a little bit rough. But it's not too bad. But obviously this is a lovely sunny day in this photo, in this video. You can see if the weather closes in, you're going to be pretty exposed. So yeah, you're definitely going to want to be careful with the weather up there. So yeah, this is going to be the first big challenge, in my opinion, of the race, and we'll see what happens. So I did this in 2015. I think I had 28mm tubeless tyres on at that point. It was okay. It was a little bit uncomfortable on the descent, and then I descended the Colle di Finestra, which you can see here is part of the parkour here. So yeah, but the question is how a rider's going to get in there. And when I rode through in 2015, there was a checkpoint on Mont Ventoux, which is around here somewhere. So basically, I went to Gap, Briançon, and then Montgenèvre, and climbed up to Siddistra. However, this year, if we go back to the resource map, some of the roads have been banned. So essentially, the way that I used all those years ago has now been banned. So you're not allowed to ride through there. You're not allowed to ride through this bit. So it kind of is going to funnel riders a little bit further north. So I think a lot of riders will end up going in through Grenoble, which then will funnel them. I think it's a Col de l'Ortore into Briançon. So you'll be passing Alpe d'Huez, Les Deux Alpes, Col de Galabier is up here. And the l'Ortore is it's kind of just like a big access road through the mountains. It's not the hardest climb in the world, but again, it's just more elevation. It's flatter to go through Gap in the valley, but obviously that does focus a lot of the traffic. So I think that is the reason that the riders have been pushed that way. So yeah, I imagine most riders will be coming in through Briançon, Montgenèvre. There was a tunnel at the top of Montgenèvre. I went through it by accident in 2015 and got a penalty. It was only an hour penalty, but I think it's definitely kind of the consequences are much higher now. So there is actually an access road around the side that you have to cycle on. You can see here because there's a massive tunnel. But by the time I was in it in 2015, I wasn't going to turn around and go back up it and make myself even more vulnerable. And then you've got the climb up to Siddistra, which is like a big mountain pass. So yeah, riders have to take on that, down the Colle di Finestra, and then they're in the north of Italy. So if we zoom out, basically riders are going to be going across the Po Valley, and the next set of like parkour are basically, they're kind of twinned. So the first one starts in Sienna, famous for the Strade Bianche road race. And there's a lot of dirt roads on this section. Now they won't be particularly technical in terms of surface. I'll see if I can find some on the Google Maps, but you can see it's the classic Tuscan countryside, rolling hills. It's not going to be super easy rolling, but it's going to be beautiful. And yeah, let me see if I can get some. It's tarmac, so it's going to be some tarmac, but there's definitely some sections of gravel in there as well. But again, they do a road race on this stuff, so it's not particularly technical. I won't expect it to kind of cause too many issues for riders, and it's just a nice kind of swooping journey through the Tuscan countryside, and then it's paired with another parkour section starting in Pentro. So again, this is gonna make the route planning interesting. So if we go to the resource map and zoom out again, as you'd expect, there is a few roads which are kind of banned. So it's going to make it a bit interesting. There's a couple in here. It's just going to make it makes it harder basically. It means that if there's a nice flat road, you're basically going to end up having to go around it. So yeah, again, the planning stage of TCR is absolutely essential. So there's a lot of band roads in this middle section around Terni, as you can see. So basically it's forcing riders through the Apennines, which are they're underrated as mountain ranges go. If I just put the terrain on, you can see there's some pretty rough, jaggy climbs through there, and the riders are going to have to pass all the way through in order to get that second checkpoint. So again, there'll be quite a lot of route diversion here because there's more roads, but it is definitely something to look out for. But the biggest kind of thing in this section is you may notice that the next checkpoint is in Albania. And basically riders are allowed to take ferries this year, which is essentially going to force riders onto the ferry from Bari to Durrës. And the thing about this ferry is that there's only 2 a day, and it's an 8-hour ferry. I think from memory, I took it last year. I think it's like 7 or 8 in the morning and 7 or 8 in the evening. I can't remember the exact timings, but essentially there's a morning ferry and an evening ferry and 12-hour gap in between. So there's going to be a lot of regrouping in Bari, I believe, and there's some big gaps afterwards. So essentially, if you want to be in the top 5 or top 10 of this race, you need to be on the same ferry as a leader. And then there'll be a big gap behind. But it will lead to some interesting tactics through Italy, because if you realise that maybe you're not going to get that morning ferry, you're going to end up on the evening ferry, it might mean that you can take the opportunity to get a hotel, have a big sleep before you reach the ferry, time it so you reach the ferry, just before, get a big feed up before you catch the ferry, have another 8-hour sleep on the ferry, and then you can really just do a final charge across the Balkans, and whichever way you choose to get through to Romania. So the next checkpoint is in Albania. So riders will be going from Durrës, and there's this section up here. I think it's a pretty good tarmac from memory. I've ridden it. I think, it's definitely been improved since the early TCRs. But you can see it's a decent road. However, there are quite a few band roads in this section. You can see this is where the planning gets quite tricky. So there's a lot of roads that are bands, and it just makes it a bit tricky to kind of navigate through. So again, this is where route choices will start to make a difference. And then the riders basically need to navigate through all these band roads to Constanta. And this is where I think we'll see some deviations on the route. Now, the obvious route for me would probably be, you want to go for the flatter route. Kosovo is a bit of a problem, because you can pass into Kosovo and out of Kosovo, no problem. But if you pass into Kosovo, cross the border with Serbia, which isn't necessarily recognised, like there's not any border controls there, you then won't be allowed to pass out the Serbian border, because they won't recognise you've entered Serbia. Kosovo is probably best avoided. So that then means you either go to the south, sort of Macedonia, Bulgaria, and across, or maybe you go further north and cut across Serbia. But the Danube runs along the border here, and I think this is going to be the key kind of route for most riders, either one side or the other of the Danube. Obviously, rivers are flat, or quite often the flatter terrain. And when you're tired at the end of the TCR, you will want to be you want to be making life easier. And you can see just from the terrain, there's all the hills, and then just the flat section here. And you can see the final parkour. It starts at this little town called Siddistra, just over the border. So this is in Bulgaria, but the actual start is in Romania. Now, there's 2 ways to kind of look at this. You can see a ferry here. So if riders go through the north, there's a ferry, but from what I've read, it's not always that reliable. So riders could essentially, have a big gap and then get stuck and then have to wait for the ferry before the final parkour. So I'm sure we'll see some interesting kind of things there. The other way is to go south through Bulgaria, but then if we look at this band map, it does make it quite tricky to try and navigate. There's quite a lot of kind of wiggles around, whereas in the north, in Romania, it's a bit more of a direct route. However, there is a way you could cross over. There is a bridge here, but I'm not sure if you can cycle on it or not. So it looks like it might be a highway. You might not be able to ride it on a bike. So that is again a bit of a question mark for riders who get there. It might be a case of you won't know till you get there. It looks like there is a path on the side. But again, yeah, there's a few question marks. It's not going to be straightforward at the end there. And we could see some changes right at the end. And then this final parkour, like final 100k into Constanta, finishing on the coast there in Romania. I've not been to Romania myself before, but it looks like it should be pretty cool. Let's see if we can put the Google Man there and see what the finish looks like. Well, next to the beach. So yeah, pretty nondescript actually. But yeah, that's the end of the TCR. So yeah, probably starting to ramble on a bit now. Hopefully that's all been useful. And yeah, check out the podcast if you haven't done already. And yeah, check out POC and their website and the discount code. And I'll be back. I'll be doing updates each evening, sort of European UK time. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you, and yeah, catch you tomorrow.